Well, good evening. My name is Paul Ethington, and I'm grateful for the privilege of serving as the pastor of Trinity Evangelical Free Church here in Ripon, Wisconsin. So I'm glad to have you all with us, even if we only get to do this virtually. This is our remembrance of Good Friday, and so I would ask, if you have not done so yet, from my email, would you please pause the video and read chapters 26 and 27 of the Gospel according to Matthew. Well, the scene is set. Judas, this man who had lived and traveled with Jesus and the other disciples for nearly 3 years, had now betrayed Jesus. So the religious leaders hated Jesus. They worked to have him arrested and to stand trial so that he would be seen as an enemy of the Roman Empire, so that he would be killed. So this guy named Pontius Pilate was the governor of this geographic region of Judea. He was under the delegated authority of the Roman emperor named Tiberius. And so he had interacted with Jesus, Pilate interacted with Jesus, and then following this custom, he agreed to have either Jesus released or this person named Barabbas. So Pilate then asked the crowd, this rioting crowd, which one that they would have released. Now the religious leaders had stirred up the crowd to call for Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a murderer. He was truly a threat to the authority of the Roman Empire. So he had already led a rebellion, and so according to the law, he deserved the death penalty, and he knew it. So he's locked in this dirty, smelly little cell. You can imagine it's hard to think of anything else except his imminent demise. I should say that prisoners of the Roman Empire had no hope for appeal. They had no rights, no other opportunities. So prisoners on this death row had nothing else to think of except their own imminent demise. So there Barabbas sat, knowing that any time he could be escorted to his own execution. So you can imagine that every time he heard the footsteps of a Roman soldier, you could take a deep breath and think, this might be my time. They might be coming for me right now. Well, then one day he hears the growing thunder of this rioting crowd that seems to be screaming his name, Barabbas, Barabbas. He perks up as he hears his name, and he feels this lump in his throat. He slowly looks around his cell. Well, the Gospel according to Matthew tells us that Pilate said to the rioting crowd, then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? The crowd thundered back, let him be crucified, crucify him. And Pilate says, what? Why? What evil has he done? But they shouted all the more, let him be crucified, crucify him. Well, Barabbas could likely not hear the voice of Pontius Pilate as he talked to the crowd, but he probably could hear the growing thunder of this rioting crowd. So the only thing Barabbas hears is his name, followed by a pause. And then the chants, crucify, crucify him. And then, that moment, come the familiar footsteps of the Roman soldiers, these prison guards getting closer and closer. You can imagine Barabbas clenching his fists as these footsteps stop right outside his cell. Barabbas can't even take a breath as the prison guard fumbles with his keys and begins to open the door to Barabbas' cell. Barabbas hangs his head. He's knowing that his time has come. And he looks up, and his eyes meet the glare of the Roman guards. Barabbas holds his breath as the guard begins to speak. You have been set free. Barabbas hangs his head in disbelief. Is this some cruel kind of joke? I'm on death row. I finally admitted that I deserve to be here. The guard takes a deep breath and says that Jesus of Nazareth, he will die instead of you. Imagine Barabbas collapsing on the dirt floor of this prison cell. He mumbles in disbelief, I'm free because Jesus of Nazareth will die in my place? What? Yes, Barabbas. Jesus will die so that you can be set free. Yeah, but Barabbas led a rebellion that was a threat to the Roman Empire. He deserved this. He deserved death. And yet Jesus was crucified for the crime that Barabbas committed. The religious leaders held Jesus up as a threat to the Roman authorities. Well, I would suggest to you that the horrific nature of Jesus' death, slowly suffocating on a cross, paints a picture of two vitally important things. So first, crucifixion demonstrates the horror of sin. Well, God is a God of justice, and so he can't just overlook rebellion against his authority. God's holiness is what demands his justice. Think about you if someone committed a horrific crime to you, or maybe you have a child or a niece or nephew, somebody committed a horrific crime to them. You would insist that the penalty must be paid in order for justice to be served. So the brutality of the crucifixion demonstrates the horror of sin, but at the same time it demonstrates the depths of God's love for his image bearers. Well, it's the horrific truth that some people will pay the penalty for their sin by being separated from God forever. But God has made another way. The crucifixion demonstrates this life-giving love of God, the eternal Son, who perfectly obeyed God the Father. You know, the Son was willingly born into human flesh so that that flesh could be crucified in place of all who believe. So imagine being in Barabbas' shoes. Imagine hearing this rioting crowd chanting his name, and then he has a growing anticipation that they're cheering for his own death. Then the guards come and get him, only to tell him that he's free to live because Jesus will die instead of him. Can you imagine being in Barabbas' shoes? Well, I would suggest that in a very real way, you are. Well, the name Barabbas means son, bar, of Abba. Bar Abbas means son of father. So you and I and every human being are a child, son or daughter, of a father. Every human being is the child of a father. And like this other son of a father, Barabbas, we've all rebelled against the ultimate authority, God. We've all led our own rebellion. In fact, we do just about every day. Well, the only Son of God the Father willingly died in the place of every son of every father. Jesus' perfect life and death and resurrection counts in place of all who believe. This is it. This is the life-giving, life-saving, life-transforming grace of God at work. It's the only way to be reconciled to God for all eternity. You know, people mocked Jesus and said, "Save yourself! Come down from the cross!" The religious leaders mocked Jesus, saying, "He saved others, yet he can't save himself." And you know that he could have. He could have. But if Jesus saved himself from a death that he did not deserve, then you and I could never be saved from the death that we do deserve. Barabbas could see that Jesus was dying in his place. Can you see that? Do you think Barabbas' life was ever the same once he was set free by Jesus' death? We don't know. We don't know, but I do hope that I get to see Barabbas in heaven and worship the resurrected King with him forever. Well, this crucifixion is a vital piece of world history, but it's not the end. So I encourage you, please join us this Sunday as we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, God the eternal Son, who lived perfectly and died sacrificially and rose again triumphantly in place of all who believe, that we might be reconciled to God the Father. So I encourage you to look forward to the hope of the resurrection. I hope we get to celebrate that together on Sunday, and I know we'll get to celebrate that for all eternity with all who believe. So I encourage you to be at peace with this great God, knowing that Jesus' crucifixion paints a picture not only of the horrific nature of sin, but of God the Father's deep and enduring and committed love for you.